we have 3 items on the agenda tonight. Discussion of Fire Station 1, discussion of Public Safety Headquarters, and then a discussion about the pending 13th Street Bridge upgrade. And if there are any citizens watching tonight, I'd just like to remind people that this is a work session for the city council. It's our opportunity to get together and informally discuss items in a public forum, typically without input from the citizens. This is our opportunity as a council to have a discussion and understand issues that are facing the city and that will likely come before us for a decision at some point in the future. No decisions will be made tonight, nor at any study session. So I just want to reiterate that, since sometimes there's confusion on exactly what the fact that it's a public meeting may mean, and it means that the public is available to observe and watch the meeting as opposed to necessarily participating in it. And in these study sessions, I think, from my experience, that giving council an opportunity to have a discussion without outside the contributions is beneficial for us in our discussion. So having said that, I will turn it over to our city administrator tonight, who's joined us and I think is ready to lead the discussion, at least on the first 2 items. And I don't know, I'll be a coin toss, I guess, on item number 3. So, Colonel Clifford, if you want to take over, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So for those of you who have not had a chance to meet, I'm Jim Clifford. I'm the new city administrator here in North Augusta. We've got 3 items on the agenda for today. So we'll start off with our first agenda item, which is the update to Fire Station 1. There are no decisions requested at this point in time for this update. This is strictly to inform the council members of the current amount of progress, to field questions from the council on where we are. So if I could refer you to a document labeled NAPS FS number 1 progress report. On the first page there, you'll see an elevation or a diagram of the proposed fire station along with some bullet points underneath. So the good news on this is this project, as you all are well aware, has been under design for some period of time. This has gone through site changes. We're obviously on the Martintown Road site now. And so where we are right now is a projected budget of $3.8 million. There have been no changes to that budget since the last council update. And so what we're looking at right now is we wanted to show you kind of hot off the presses the current elevation and the schematics. We'll place this on the city website for potential comment. And I see Rachel's putting that up on the screen now. And our hope is to be able to move to bid in the October timeframe and come back to council, hopefully in late November, to be able to go and show kind of what the bids were, and then move forward to breaking ground in early 2021. So I know, I think Rachel's got the renderings of the elevations. So I'll stop here on this first page. As far as, most of this is rehashing kind of the current status of the project, along with some of the schedule. So one thing I wanted to highlight with the schedule, so we had some iterative discussions with Mark from Capstone Services about the construction timeline. And so what I wanted to take a moment and make sure the council is aware of is there are potentially going to be some additional timeline hits to any major construction project in the region. So based on the experience I had over at the fort on some of the projects there, with COVID-19, all it takes is somebody on a work crew coming up as a COVID-19 positive, and then you're taking a 2-week hit on that particular commodity area. So example for us was roofers. So we had a roofing crew on Fort Gordon, and if you had a roofer come down with COVID-19, that whole roofing crew basically came off the job for that 2 weeks period of time. The other thing we were seeing on the fort is delays on specialized equipment. So with a fire station, we start talking about things like, getting 2x4s and plywood out of Home Depot, really no issues there. But when we start talking about specialized, manufactured fire station equipment, there's a potential that we're going to hit some timeline snags as we go forward. So all things being equal, there's nothing that jumps out at me right now that says that we won't be able to continue on the timeline that we're anticipating. Mark and his team are estimating that this station will be operational by the summer of 2022. That having been said, I'd feel more comfortable telling the council that this would be a late fall beginning for that project. And if we bring it in a little bit earlier, hey, that's great. But what I don't want to do is falsely promise to you all that, hey, Memorial Day weekend or 4th of July weekend of 2022, we got fire trucks rolling out of that station and then hit a 4-month snag because of COVID potential options. So I just wanted to put that on the table as we go forward on looking at construction timelines. I would tell you that with any construction project, at least that I've been associated with, the hardest part is getting it started. And we're obviously in that phase now. But once we can get this thing on the street for bid, things will start to accelerate and we'll start to see a more consistent glide path on a construction project. So with that, what I'd like to do, Rachel, is we can go to the second page and show you all some of the renderings and the elevations. So again, very similar to an existing fire station project we have here in North Augusta. And then if we scroll up here to page 3, that gives you the overall site layout, which incorporated some additional buffering. I'd have to defer to Mark on the total number. I think 15 feet was the minimum required by code. I know they moved some of the items here on the site layout to buy additional buffer space through some of the residences. Mark, if you're up on the line, I'd love to get your feedback on the buffers if you have it.
Yes, sir. So yes, one of the key citizen feedbacks was how important that buffer was on all sides of Station 1, new proposed Station 1. So worked with the designers and South Carolina DOT to really what we're looking at is I believe we'll have doubled the buffer that we started with, and along with adding a good bit of planted landscaping around that perimeter. So that was a goal and an objective that we got through South Carolina DOT and through the designers. So hopefully that helps all the neighbors and addresses as much of their buffer concerns as we could do.
May I step in on that, please? I was visiting Miss Powell's property yesterday, who I did not, until I walked the land, realize they're literally in their yard almost. And my advice here is I would really love to see every council member, and Jim, Rachel, and Mayor included, go and look at the property itself with these neighbors. Because I understand we still haven't really communicated on things with them. And the 3 neighbors that are really impacted, of course, are the Powells, John Minger, who is sick, and I'm sure he cannot get out, but he does have his sister who manages a lot for him. And then Zach, and I'm sorry to say I cannot remember Zach's last name, the one young man that bought the White House right there on Observatory. But I would really love to suggest that all council members go and see what the neighbors are talking about with this buffer and all, because it is step right off one property right onto this city property. And I would really, and I told Miss Powell that I really felt she needed to call every council member and mayor and assistant and city administrator to come and look exactly what they're talking about so we can work with our neighbors. I feel like we sort of dropped the ball a little bit on that with our the neighbors there. So I think before anything gets started, we all need to go and look at this. Thank you.
Ms. Pat, just to let you know, I've walked up and down this property and the property line quite a few times. I didn't do it with the residents, but I've walked that whole property quite a few times. But yes, I understand the concerns.
Hold on, I had unmuted myself here. And yes, and I know we have, but I really think we need, because we want to go in this neighborhood and everybody sort of have a warm and cozy feeling here. And I really feel we need, as council people, to meet with these three neighbors and let them tell their concern. And I mean, they're happy with the fire station going there. No one is bucking the fire station not going there. They're happy with that. But they're just a few little concerns. And I myself did not realize that till I got there yesterday, and she was pointing some things out to me. But I just think, we owe this to them. Let's say that. Thank you.
Well, Pat, I have no problem, and I've been out there multiple times looking at the properties and where the fire station's going. The point that I wanted to talk to you about and others is, I don't know what you mean by we haven't been communicating with them. We've involved them and given them opportunities to be a part of the design. We've listened to their inputs. They've spoken multiple times at council meetings. We've shown them the graphics. We've shown them the drawings. We've revised the buffer. We've revised the driveway. We've done a number of things that are specifically in response to the concerns of the citizens in that area. So I think it's a little unfair to insinuate that we have not been in discussions with them. Maybe not to the extent that they would like, maybe not to the extent that I would like. But this is a process involving, time, money, and a multitude of people. And I just think that that's a statement that is not, in fact, representative of what's been going on and the efforts that we have made to consider their inputs, concerns, and to make adjustments in the plan. So, and I think it's reflected in the layout you're looking at, with the buffer's probably doubled. The entrance, the road off of if it's the observatory or whatever, I'm not sure. We've got the curb now. You can see the plantings in front of the parking lot. All those things that are being taken care of. So I think that was a little, I think that was a criticism that is not necessarily. We all have issue. We all fail at times to do everything we could, but I think we've been pretty reactive and responsive to them. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Well, and I understand that, and I know we have, but there's still something. I still don't see where it would hurt to walk that property. Have we actually, and Rachel, I guess you know more than Jim would know on this, have we actually been out, city people, on the property with the property owners?
Miss Pat, I've walked it with Ken and Karen and Steve.
Okay.
I think.
When did you do that?
Yeah, I think their big concern, and I don't know, we have to talk to whoever's constructing this. I think they want to leave as much of the natural barrier as possible.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're saying these things, but it's like I hate to say y'all, when I have to keep going and talking the same thing, and I know Karen said she has not communicated with anyone, but I know this is not but I just feel in my heart, if we could do this, and when a citizen calls me, I go to that citizen. I'm gonna find out and do as much as I can for it. And like I said, I don't know. It might take 10 minutes to do this, and like I said, I think, as Mayor Green used to say, we'll end up with a win-win situation.
Okay, and again, I have been on this since the beginning when they first started test drilling to cut some of the stuff out of the way so that they could check the land to make sure it's buildable. I get a call on a Saturday morning. I went up there with Ken and goodness, can't think of his name right in a second. But anyway, we walked it. I've talked to him. I have talked to Karen before. again, I think their big issue is keeping as much of the natural buffer as we can. Now, we've went from 15 to 25 foot, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm for that if it can be done in order to build it. That I don't know. That's up to the builder or, the designers to try to keep as much as we can. But I don't have an issue with that if it's possible to do the building with a lot of that natural in place. That's what I got from them. And, a lot of this design, Steve Bryant, he talked about the curve and he talked about moving the building. So, a lot of this is based on his design. It's not exact, but this one does give more buffers than the very one that was presented to us.
If I can chime in a bit, I think Bob, Mayor Pettit's right. We have listened a decent amount here, and I'm proud of the changes that staff and consultants have made to the design. We even eliminated the rear entry and exit point as well. So I was glad to see that. Comment I've got, or question, and I'm sure some of the residents around there may have the similar question. It's not labeled on this plan. You can see right there behind the building, there's a big rectangular box with four corners, distinct corners to it. I was just curious what that is supposed to be back there, if someone can chime in on that.
Fletcher, that is underground storm retention back there. So we're going to put our stormwater underground on the back of this site. Oh,
okay. That's another thing that I guess the residents should need to know. That's an expensive item, and will improve the look significantly, as well as reduce mosquitoes and bugs that hang out around storm ponds.
Yeah, and trying to minimize the number of trees on the Clay Street side and that whole perimeter in the back versus trying to grade out a retention pond area.
And Mark, what about the houses? You come in on Clay Street and make that right onto Atlantis, like water going downhill. Is that going to do something with this? I think I saw 2 or 3 houses back in there yesterday. It's off Clay Street, called Atlantis.
Yes, ma'am. So, Ms. Pat, at one time we had looked at access to the fire station from Clay Street. It wasn't a great fit for the residents. We've gone away from that. We enter and exit off of Martintown as far as apparatus. And
right.
In Clay Street, what we're trying to do is minimize any of the current trees, vegetation that has to be taken down. Matter of fact, we have very specific disturbing limits. And then we're going to plant back there as well. But trying to minimize any kind of trees or clearing that has to be done on that Clay Street side.
Okay,
Mark or Rachel, I don't know if you can point with your pointer, but on this drawing, it's maybe a little hard for some people to see, but the trees that actually will stay, they're in light pin, I guess, on the drawing. And people may not realize that those are trees that are designated to actually stay. If you take the time, like that, if you point out, those are trees that will stay per this plan. So some people don't see that, especially down on that property line over there. There's
I don't. Are y'all showing something on the screen? Because I do not have it. All I see is y'all's faces.
Yes, Pat, I'm sharing my screen to show my desktop so viewers can see the handout that we've sent to you all.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at I believe it's page 3 of the handout.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's just not showing up on my screen.
Rachel, if you could maybe just speak on just what you're pointing at, maybe just briefly so people might see that.
Okay. So as David was referencing, there are some trees that are listed on here and they're darker in color, the outline of what the canopy would be. There are other trees represented with more faint colored outline of the canopy. And so what David was referencing are these represent existing trees that will remain on the property that will not be removed. And we did hear absolutely from neighbors to leave as much of the natural tree line as possible, particularly back here along the property line with Zach's house. And so that is definitely something that Mark picked up on and has worked very hard to let everyone know on the design team that these trees should stay. As long as they are healthy and they are viable to the extent possible, they should stay. And we're really excited about that because it's going to help to keep it to a much more natural site with the existing mature trees. So we'll have the new plantings in the front and then the mature trees along the sides and in the back.
If I can just go ahead and chime in, I think I just want to commend staff and everybody for putting this together. To me, it's obvious that we took the input from the neighbors and made pretty significant changes to the site to incorporate those. I mean, is it perfect? Of course not. No design is perfect, but I think, doubling the buffer, keeping the, as much of the natural plantings, the trees that were the existing trees there as is possible to kind of increase the buffer. The layout looks really good. And to Ms. Pat's point, I would agree. I think I would like to have some sort of a forum, or I know in these times a public meeting of some sort is probably not likely, but just some way to get continued feedback from the neighbors and, just again, so that they're in the loop and if there are any tweaks, we can at least be advised of some of those. I think that's something that is important going forward, but I would agree with the mayor. I think this site plan, absolutely took, at least what I was hearing from them. Pat, I haven't walked the property with the neighbors, but I have been on the property numerous times. I've seen it. I've had multiple conversations with several of the neighbors over the course of the last year and plus. So I feel like they've had their input. They've had input. I don't want to say like they've had their input and that's it, but they've had input. Again, I don't think there's any arguing that this site plan takes into account a lot of their input and incorporates a lot of their desires into it. I was hoping for maybe a little more traditional looking facade on it, but I certainly have no issue with the facade. It's a nice looking building. I mean, I know that there are some budgetary constraints on trying to do anything fancier than what we have available, so I'm not sure if any other facades were considered or anything like that. But outside of that, I think it's, I'm happy. I think it looks good. Again, just good job to all. I think this is, I think it's really good.
Thanks, Councilman Toole. Do we have any other comments from council on this topic?
I just wanted to ask real quick if Chief Thomas is, I see him there. He's still here. Does this meet everything that y'all need, Chief? Is there anything that we had to get rid of, or is it good with you and your staff?
Yes, sir. Again, it's the prototype of Station 3. It's almost exactly like that with a few minor tweaks, but Eric, it's what we need. I mean, we've made some adjustments. We worked with the neighbor and neighborhoods. We worked with the setbacks, and obviously you can see from the way the station's positioned how we shifted it so it's closer to Martintown Road than it is anywhere. And so I think once it's built, again, it's going to be a great piece in that community, and they can have greater neighbors than us. I just can't emphasize enough the urgency. We need to put that station on that piece of property as quickly as we can.
If I may, I'd like to just add
Rachel, excuse me. If you're trying to talk, I see you're not muted, but I can't hear you. Are you, Did you want to make a comment? Anybody hear him? It looks like your microphone somehow is not operable as opposed to the go to the meeting muting. No. He said okay, so I guess he's figured it, like me, it would be a technical problem beyond immediate resolution. So I don't even know what to suggest, Bob. I'm sorry. If you want to text something to Rachel, or that might work, but.
Well, there's also the, Mr. Mayor, we've got the chat function on the GoToMeeting, so he can certainly get on there on the bubble on the top right-hand side and chat to everyone. That will get his question out to everybody.
Okay, thank you. Virtual meetings are tough. I think that's the bottom line. We keep practicing, but there's always an issue that jumps up at us. So, okay.
Right.
I'm sorry, Jim. Any other comments on?
Mr. Mayor, I think Rachel had something she was trying to put on the table. Rachel, what do you got?
Just 2 points I'd like to make. I wanted to address Ms. Pat's question. No, I personally have not been on the property with the neighbors, but I've met with them in person at the input session and spoken to many of them on the phone. I also wanted to let everyone know that we've created a webpage on our website. I think, as I've indicated previously, we've turned it on live today now that we have new information to share with everyone. northaugusta.net/FS1. So the letter F as in fire, the letter S as in station, and the number 1. And that will take you directly to the webpage. I just launched it this afternoon, and tomorrow morning I will post the document that we've shared with everyone tonight, which has the elevations and which has the updated site layout as well. There's a location for interested parties to sign up to receive updates via email. And this will be our public repository, if you will, for the documents related to the site. So it'll give everyone an opportunity to review the documents as we have them presented to you. Once the construction begins, we will place the time-lapse camera out on site the way that we had it in Riverside Village for the ballpark and for the amphitheater. And it's my understanding we'll be able to embed a link so that at any point folks can go and view the time lapse of the construction once it's underway.
One other quick question. I know we did some testing. I guess it's been about 8-9 months ago, but is there any issues with the site, or are we definitely able to build on this site? Did we get that back from CSRA testing?
Mark?
Yes, sir. Mr. Eric, all good to go on the soil testing from JLA. So all thumbs up on that. And as far as talking to Darren Prickett, no other borings required. So I think we're in good shape on that. Obviously, just with the hedge that, when we do borings, we're testing those spots where the borings are. You can always bump into something else. Hopefully we won't. But we've done our due diligence on the site.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
If I can chime in real quick, Rachel, while you were talking, I was typing in the website, and maybe others have done the same. And maybe I typed it wrong, but it's coming up page not found. I did northaugusta.net/SF1, number 1, not typing out 1.
I think it was FS number 1. Is that what you typed? As in Fire Station 1?
Yes.
SF1, correct. I'm sorry, I misspoke.
FS1. And we've already had 2 people sign up for email updates.
It's still not coming up on my end. Maybe it's just me. Okay, fair enough. I'll check it later.
Hey, Councilman Dickert, I'll send you a link directly, but I'm up on it right now, at least here in the municipal building along with Rachel. So I know she's got it live.
Okay.
We'll make a copy. Actually, we'll send it to all the council members So you'll have a copy of it.
Fair enough. I just want to make sure it was working. Thanks.
Okay. Looks like nothing else. Let's go ahead and move on to Public Safety Headquarters.
All right.
Council members, this is in advance of the discussion. If you can put your hands on the CPST4 document that that Sharon sent you last week. This is probably the time, a little bit later in this discussion, where it might be relevant. So, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, obviously, as most of the council is aware, I was in quarantine for a period of time last week, and so I was doing a lot of virtual meetings, and I was able to participate in the meeting with Rachel and Mark and a few others and Chief about the public safety headquarters. And so, actually, 2 weeks ago now. And so, as we had this discussion, we had some initial feedback from a national estimator that the price range of this project was going to be high. And by high, I mean really high, in the high teens, if you will, for the cost of the project. So what I asked the staff to do, specifically with Mark, is to take a look and just kind of give us some options. And so what we did here is, number one, we want to show you a rendering of what we think the headquarters can look like. That's with the courthouse. So if you open up your NAPS headquarters progress report, that first page has got a rendering of what that building looks like in a consolidated fashion, where you have both the public safety headquarters and the city courthouse in the same facility. Separate entrances, and Kelly may chime in a little bit later and say why that may be important in the future as far as having a different delineation between the public safety headquarters and the courthouse. I think that there are some regulations or statutes that may be coming our way in the coming years that require that separation. But regardless, so when I started hearing the initial cost estimates, which in my opinion were really high, I asked Mark and his team to kind of go back and look at, from a range of options, what would happen if we cut the court out of the building, and so we just have a public safety headquarters and not a courthouse. I understand that the city council gave guidance to the staff last year that indicated they wanted to have the courthouse as part of this. I recognize that, but I wanted at least for you as the council to have an understanding of the range of options as it goes forward. So right now, Mark was able to work with some other estimators and get the overall scope of the project, or the estimation, to be, in my opinion, a little more reasonable. But even with that, we're still above the overall cost of the project. And so if we, so just to put it in financial terms, what I would tell you is that we are more likely to stay on scope or on budget if we do not have the courthouse as part of the project. That has pros and cons to that, as opposed to having a consolidated facility. But there are going to be some issues associated either way. So what I really wanted to do today first is let's walk through the renderings, and then we'll talk some of the financials. So there you have on the first page, Rachel's got pulled up a number of things that are out there on the renderings. And if we can go to the second page, Rachel. The second page will have a rendering of what the building looks like. There we go. From the corner as you look at it.
Now, is that without the courthouse, what we're looking at now?
Ma'am, everything you're looking at right now is with the courthouse. So
Okay.
all the design, all the specs that you see here on these renderings is a consolidated facility with both functions that are inside that building. So public safety headquarters and the courthouse. And then as you go into the third page, you can get more of the schematic, which gives you the overhead view of what the headquarters could look like. And again, it's cheated a little more towards the street. I believe that's based on council's desire to have it closer to to Buena Vista Avenue, which is fine. And so that kind of shows you what that can look like. And so the reason why we have this on the agenda for today is really to get guidance. So we're at a decision point now on, are we going to proceed with our current set of schematics and design requirements, or are we going to have to pause and look at potentially de-scoping the project and dropping the courthouse aspect of it off? Understanding we don't have perfect information right now, and it's hard to make a decision based on that. That's why this isn't a decision brief per se as far as how we're going to work funding. But we wanted to make sure one of the reasons why you have capital sales tax 4 in front of you is because ultimately those would be projects that would have to be delayed or potentially sacrificed based on cost overruns based on a consolidated facility. So as we looked at the overall numbers, and Mark probably bailed me out here, what we were seeing in our kind of estimation was financials that would draw us from the range of 12.6 million to 14.3 million with a consolidated facility. Mark, is that accurate from your perspective?
And Jim, yes. I mean, essentially, what we tried to do is we kind of ran a range of scenarios, but essentially with using the estimators, that's pretty close. That was one of the feedback we had got from a kind of a local GC and plugging in some of his information. But the estimator came back when we basically took the estimator's detailed estimate and applied some local factors to it. It was actually a little tighter range. It was like a 13.2 to 14.3 with the local GC saying we had a potential of coming in at that 12.6 you just mentioned, Jim, depending on how the bids came in. But that's our range, and just keep in mind we're at schematic design only. And this is what we talked to council about, that we go through conceptual, we go through schematic design, and then we take a strategic pause to go look at these elevations, the site plan, and this budget, and then come back and review all these with council. And so that is what this review is all about, like Clifford just mentioned.
So from a math perspective, if we, and I'm not recommending that we do this per se, but I just want to make sure all the facts are on the table. If we potentially remove the courthouse option, from this facility, that gets us a net savings of about $2 million. And that's a very rough estimate. I kind of put Mark on the spot with, really just a week to turn this. So we're doing estimates based on square footage differentials. And so, if you drop 2 million off those estimates, if you're taking 12.6 as the low end, that puts you into scope budget, I should say. And then at the 14.3, that still puts you high. So regardless, the question really to the council is going to be is, do you like the schematics? Do you like the current design, of the facility? And if so, are you willing to go forward with this with a potential, budget range, which is going to be in excess of our current budget? If that's not acceptable to the council, we can go back and relook the schematics, do a more detailed engineering look at dropping the cost or dropping the courthouse and seeing what cost that will drive. Understanding that if we take that tact, that will likely tack on at least 6 months to the project. And I know this is a project that's been in critical need for some time. So in very simplistic terms, we can either go forward with the current set of designs that we have and look at the budget that we are potentially forecasting, which is in 12.6 million to 14.3 million range, or we can go back and get a redo on the project, cut the courts out of it, and potentially get around $2 million of savings, which by my basic math puts us in the 10.6 million to 11.3 million, or correction, 12.3 million as we go forward. So ultimately, by cleaving the court out of there, you're going to save some money, but not at the scope that we initially had hoped for. So when I did a around the horn kind of take on things, the staff's recommendation to include chiefs was to maintain the current glide path and maintain the current facility with the courthouse attached and go forward on that, understanding that that's going to come at either a bump or a delay of projects yet to be determined in capital sales tax 4. So that's a lot of data and information. But I'd like to go ahead and turn over to Mark. Did I miss anything from a engineering perspective? And also to Chief for his perspective. But I'll turn over to Mark first.
No, Mr. Clifford, I think you hit it pretty well. I mean, this is what we committed to council to go do, which is we took the guidance from our last update. We incorporated court, and we said we would go this far in design, trying to keep things operationally sensitive, but there's not a lot of frills in here. I mean, we've really worked the program. The main thing that has probably impacted our square footage on this one on the court side was as we were going through the design, we early on had a shared lobby for court and police, thinking that we would have one control point and have the public come in at one spot. Well, what we got flushed out during the design meetings is that by the time you have public that are seeing the clerks in the main entrance coming to see public safety, and then you have people coming in and out of courts every day, and you're trying to scan and you're going through the queuing process, that it would have just been too congested and not operationally efficient. So court has its own entrance, and right now public safety has its. But when court's not in session, that entrance is closed, and we're able to control just the public safety side of it. So operationally, a great thing for us. It did add some square footage, but I think Mr. Clifford's hit it pretty well. I mean, several things we said we were going to come back we had talked about floor plans. We've gone in detail with the chief and captains. I mean, I'm sure they're getting tired of going through that scope. I would say we've gone through the floor plans and the program scope with captains and the chief probably no fewer than 12 or 13 times at this point, and obviously we're not done with it. But we're trying to make sure that not only are we capturing everything, but if there's space in there that we don't need, or it can be multi-function space, which we've done with a lot of the spaces, we're trying to capture that, and that takes lots of planning. But if you do that, a lot of times you can save square footage. Just as a side note, early on programs of this were in excess of 50,000 square feet as an operational need, and right now we're just a hair over 35,000, which is a tremendous reduction, but just a lot of planning anyway. So that's all good, all successful things with the team, and things we definitely want to bring back to council. We want to bring the budget range, just one of the things we promised to do and are bringing back. We want to bring these elevations so council could see the look, front elevation. And the other elevation we said was very important to us is this corner look, essentially looking southeast from Riverside and West Bonavista Vista. Or East Bonavista Vista, right here at the corner as you're driving east and you're looking up to it. We wanted to see how that looked with the fence and that whole presence of the building, which I think turned out really well. And then we wanted to share the overall site plan. Right now we got 146 parking spaces over there. There's been a lot of little shifting around on the footprint to accommodate that. But yeah, so this is exactly what we said we wanted to do as a team, and coming back to council to give an update on this. Matter of fact, the architects and JLA we think have done a really good job of listening, taking the feedback, and then bringing this back to us. So right now we have the first and second floor plan. We've got these elevations, and we're done with schematic design. And right now we have told them to take a strategic pause while we review this with council on both the dollars and the look of the building.
Also, if I could, before we go to Chief, for City Attorney Kelly, if you have any thoughts or you'd like to put out here with the council, we had a previous discussion about, part of the reason why we have the design that we do here is because of concerns about having shared entrance space with public safety headquarters and city courts and some of the legal opines that you see coming down the pike. So I'd be curious if you could share that with the council.
Yeah, I'll be glad to. Basically, when we were discussion last week, this issue with the finances and the potential for dropping out. I pointed out that I would say for 30 years at least, and maybe longer than that, there has continually been discussion about ensuring that there was separation between the court system and public safety. I can recall city attorney conferences over the years back into the 80s and 90s that kind of run in cycles, that there would be somebody talking about how we had to ensure the integrity between the two and that they were not mixed, and that the court system had to be totally separate from police. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't be, that's in no way saying they can't be in the same building like is designed here, but I have seen more emphasis on this in the last few years, and with the state of affairs now with law enforcement and everything else, I can see it coming back up. And I can see more concern about ensuring that you get arrested by the police and you get tried by the courts, and it's not the same group. They're totally separate. And we certainly have to do that with staff and the way the court is run. But I think it makes it harder to do when you're as close together as most police, public safety, and court operations are. Because I would say historically, going back over the years, that the where people were tried was in the same place where they were maybe brought in when they were arrested, and they were very close together. And early on, I think that the courts were just an arm of the police. But that's been separated, and with Attorney General's opinions, with judicial ethic opinions, it's been pretty much shared that can't be, and we've worked with that over the years to try to do it. But as long as they're in the same building, I think the appearance is more of an issue. And certainly if they are in distinct, separate facilities, there may be a benefit to that. And it may help with being able to ensure people that where you're being tried for a crime that you're accused of committing by the police, you're not being tried by the police, you're tried by a court system that is totally separate. Now, what you lose a lot of times with this is, and I said, if we have the court facilities separate from the public safety headquarters, you've got a security issue that you've got to deal with that many times is automatically taken care of because you're in the same building. And over the years, we've benefited from that. We've had issues in the courtroom that have arisen when I've been there for a trial. I remember on one occasion, I saw things heating up, and the next thing I know, there are about 8 public safety officers standing in the back of the courtroom, and they were able to be brought in that quickly. And you lose that when you separate buildings. But I will just tell you, there is some consideration, I think, needs to be given to the appearance issue and the definite division of the two. I am fully anticipating that in the next 24 months, we're going to be hearing a lot more about this and more demands and requirements from actually the court system. And by that, I mean the state court system, the Chief Justice, that is going to require more definite separation between the two. As to whether, I mean, I guess my feeling about this is it's not as bad as you might think if your real desire was to build this building and have them together, to end up having them separate and having a separate building that when people came to court, they're not coming to the police station, they're coming to the court to be tried.
So Kelly, just, I understand there's an appearance problem, but can we, as you just put your, subject matter expert hat on, are we going to be able to withstand some kind of legal challenge or whatever else in the future, by having, both facilities in the same overall footprint, but with having separate entrances? Or do you think there's major risk by doing it that way?
Well, I don't think there's that big. I don't think that there's any way that they're going to go to cities that have both in the same building and say you can't be in the same building. But I think it's harder to convince and show that your court is totally independent from police or public safety if they're in the same building. So once again, I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm just saying that maybe sometimes appearance-wise, it's easier to demonstrate that you're dealing with two separate entities, so to speak, between police and the courts, if they're in separate buildings. Now, of course, this design, I mean, they're somewhat in the same building, but there are different entrances for both, and they're designated differently. So that certainly would help. It's just, and I'm again, I know I've said it twice, I'll say it the third time. I'm not saying you cannot have them in the same building. I'm saying if it ends up, we cannot have, it doesn't work financially to put them in the same building, and we have to maintain them where they are, that there may be some benefits to that, if in nothing else, in appearance, to the general public.
All right, Kelly. Appreciate your feedback and your inputs. That's all good stuff. If I could, I'd like to transition over to Chief. Chief, do you have any comments you want to put out here for the council, reference public safety headquarters?
I'll just make a couple comments, and back to Mark. We've done this exercise as he's talked about numerous times. This facility is built obviously for the future. There's no wasted space in it. You heard Mark talk about the number of square footage that was cut out of it. Back to the point of the courts, and as you look at that design, it was we tasked ourselves to do that because we know that those two have to be separated. There's a police side and there's a court side, and that's where we got into seeing that very early. It's totally separate. I will tell you that the building that courts, and we've done exactly what council asked us to do, is to include the courts in that building. So again, I think you got to look at a lot of different things. Those resources that are in the courts wear dual hats. Records belongs to public safety. Courts obviously is something different. And that is just an administrative change that could be changed in years to come, where they didn't answer to public safety. They could answer to somebody else or live on their own. So as a function, as you look at that, yeah, we're hand in hand. We're involved in what goes in courts. But as Kelly said, a critical piece of what we do is provide security for that courtroom. It's a very violent place from time to time. We see assaults, we see criminal domestic violence cases tried there. So there's numerous amounts of people in and out of that, but we separate it in the building itself. Jim talked about the $2 million. Is that cost effective to pull it out, to postpone the building somewhat, 6 months, I guess, to try to reconstruct and do this all over again? That's a decision that I can't make, but I think you need to look at too the overall building that they're in now, and I'm talking about courts, is well over 30 years old, and so there's upkeep to that building as well, and then it becomes that security function that we provide already right now. So there's a lot of different variables that you have to look at and talk about if you start pulling court out of this public safety building.
Thanks, Chief. So really, as we go, back to the council for, comments and questions, again, what we're looking for here as a staff is the guidance on, are you comfortable as the city council for us moving forward with the current design, understanding that it's going to be more expensive having the courts system as part of the same floor plan and facility, as opposed to trying to gather cost savings of potentially up to $2 million. And that's really what we're looking for as far as a guidance. We're not trying to make decisions today about what potential bill payers would be, but we are trying to get a sense of, hey, we'll go forward with the current design or not go forward with the current design and go from there. So I turn it back over to council for questions and comments. Curious to see what your thoughts are on this matter. Understand that it's a little more pricey than we were looking at. But I thought it was important for us to get a check with you all as the elected leaders of the city to see, if you're going to be comfortable with us proceeding in this manner or if you're not. So I'll turn it over to council for questions or comments.
Okay, Jim, before you get too far down the road, so I have a couple of comments. One, in CPST 4, we originally started with a funding allocation of 10.5 million. It's been up now by an additional 600,000 taken away from fire truck or something so we're at 11.1. You were talking without the courthouse of 12.6. Is that right?
That's Mr. Mayor, that's the low end estimate for with the courthouse is 12.6. So Mark could probably correct my math on there. Again, that's on the very low end of the estimation right now based on that facility as we displayed, which is both the public safety headquarters and the court system. So we may get lucky that, we may be at the 12.6, end of the range, but we may not.
Okay. What's your estimate without the court? 11.1?
So depending on, so if we look at the range of numbers of, depending on what Mark feels comfortable with, but we've gotten the very low end of the estimate is 12.6 million. The very high end of the estimate was 14.3 million. And so that's with the facility as it's displayed. If you take a $2 million estimate is based solely on square footage. It's really just looking at a cost per square foot and then dropping the square foot requirement for the courthouse off of that overall facility. So it's a rough estimate. It's not a fully matured estimate, but it's just looking at the square footage overall based on what it would be with and without the courthouse. So I think Mark's numbers worked out to 2.1 million, but let's just round it down to 2. Let's call that a potential $2 million savings for not having the courthouse. Understand there may be other hidden costs and other funds for that, but that would drop us to a 10.6 million range, all the way down to a 12.3, or all the way up to a 12.3 million range without the courthouse, which definitely puts you in the current kind of budget, if you will, that if you've got 11.1 million set aside right now for this project, you're kind of hitting, right in the middle of that range without the courthouse. Does that answer?
Yes, it does. Thank you for the clarification. So, as I understand from our discussions, if the decision is to separate them, not to include the courthouse, you're looking at a nominal 6-month delay in the design. A slip of 6 months in the start of construction. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, that's correct. Mark, do you have any other information you want to put on the timeline? Last time we spoke, 6 months was your estimate, and but throw month plus or minus. But I think 6 months was a pretty tight timeline with us staying on top of it to keep it moving. But 6 months, I think, is a realistic timeline. Mark, what say you?
Yes, sir. That would be 6 months is a hustle. Essentially, what's happening is you're taking your schematic designs, and although we have paused, we'd be taking. It's not just chopping off the court on that south side. We have operational space above it, so you have to kind of rework not only first floor and second floor. Now, again, we haven't gone all the way down the path on a lot of the design details intentionally, so. It would be at least 6 months, because what would have to happen? You have to lay it out, meet with the designer, they go out and design it, then you meet again with the team several more times. Then once you got that squared away, go recast all the renderings and then come back to council. So yes, a 6 month turn if you hustle.
Okay, so basically, I think the trade-off is 6 months or 2 million. Is that correct? In other words, if we proceed, it's 2 million. If we were to make the change, it would be a 6 month delay, and we'd save 2 million on a project that is. I mean, we're squeaking to get without the courthouse. We're squeaking to get into the money that's allocated now in CPST 4. Is that a reasonable statement?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let me just talk a little bit about CPST 4. When we got the allocation from the county, they estimated that our receipts would be 30.7 million. In discussions that I had when Todd was here, I think Cammie was a party to him, the sense was that 30.7 is a number likely not to be achieved. Todd was of the, and I have no way of doing anything. He said Todd said he thought 26.7 or 27 million was more reasonable, which means that would be 3.7 shorter. And now we have a COVID on top of it at this point in time. And I think I asked Cammie to look at it today. But it could be another 10% hit. If it were 10%, that would be another 2 million. So we'd be down 3 seats of 24.5 million available for capital projects, sales tax for projects. So that takes, a pretty hefty chunk out of our project. I'm just talking about the implication that the 2 million might have in the overall capital project list that we put together. So I just wanted to get that out for consideration. I know this is an issue that certainly needs to be discussed. Bob, I regret that you're not able to be a part of it yet. Maybe you can, I'd like you to be a part of the chat or whatever, but just, this discussion has broad-ranging impacts in addition to public safety headquarters, and I'll stop there. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, let's start us off by not as much providing comments as asking a question, because I think some of this is based on an assumption we have 11.1 million, and I want to be clear that we do have 11.1 million. It's my understanding we bonded that money. So is the 11.1 million includes the interest payments, does it not? And thus the money allocated available for construction cost, I thought was 10 point something. Is that correct? Or do we truly have 11.1 million for project funds and the interest is above and beyond the 11.1?
Councilman Dickert. I'll turn that over to Cammie for comment. I'm tracking that we have, as you discussed, we did a $10.5 million bond, taking off the fee structure off that really gave us working at $10.25 million. I believe the council made a resolution to cross-level funding out of fire apparatus to this project as well. And then probably the interest you were referring to got us closer to the 11.1 mil. But Cammie, if you're up on the network, if you could tell us kind of what your thoughts are relative to the 11.1.
Yes, we will have the 11.1 on hand cash. We do have a portion of it is bond proceeds, Fletcher, that you mentioned, and that's going to be used to pay off the debt that we borrowed on public safety. But whenever you made that transition of moving the portion from the fire apparatus, we made up for the interest and other fees that were going to have to be paid on the debt.
Okay, but we started with 10.5 and we moved $600K from the apparatus, so that got us to the 11.1. So if we've got an all-in budget for headquarters at the 11.1 and we borrowed some money, I mean, where's the interest coming out of? Is the interest for those bonds coming out of the 11.1, or we're pulling it from somewhere else?
Your total debt service is 10.7, if that helps clarify. So it's a combination in order to fund this project. You have bond funds, and then you also have cash on hand that's coming in from sales tax that is not committed to make the debt service payments. I can send you a copy of the cash flow sheet if that will be helpful, a copy of the amortization of the debt. I think that will help answer your questions if I can.
Yeah, maybe so. I'm just trying to make sure before we're making council as a whole is discussing, we're all discussing this 11.1 as if we have all of the 11.1 to spend. And I'm just trying to verify that we do in fact have 11.1 to spend, and it's not some number of 10.7 or 10.8 or something because we have interest payments, because obviously the interest has got to come out of one of these 19 projects, and I would assume we would charge that bond interest to project number 1, the headquarters project. So I would think the total project, the revised funding allocation of 11.1 for headquarters would include the interest. And I guess that's what I'm trying to verify is that accurate? Because I have my thoughts, and I didn't think about, Mr. Mayor, what you made the comment there on potentially this 30.7 million potential revenue from sales tax being less. I guess that's something, yes, we do need to weigh in our discussion. I mean, I definitely have some ideas of how we can come up with a couple million real quick off of this list without getting on a soapbox. Item number 18, I think, is a prime candidate for it, especially since the county so graciously decided not to fund our project, but fund certain other people's projects. So if they're not going to contribute towards that project, then I don't think we should either. So that's $2 million that I think we can free up. That I don't know if that has to cover shortfall in the whole program or can, in my mind, be reallocated to headquarters project. Since I'm already talking, I guess I'll go on and comment on it overall. I want to commend staff and the designers. I think we've got a very attractive looking building. What's been pitched here, and I think we all need to know this. This isn't the final design, but the general direction they're going with it and what it looks like, I think is great. I've been in conversations, I know, with Mark and some staff over the past several months about the project. I think it's a very attractive looking building. I'm with Bob Brooks had made the comment we need to keep them together in the chat. I'm with you, Bob. I think courts and police need to be together. I think we made that decision a couple months ago when we council met. We get one shot to do this. I think we need to do it right. Police has had to sacrifice and wait their turn while other areas of the city have been funded for various projects. This is public safety's time to get a new facility, and I don't want to cut it short. I think we're just going to have to, make some tough calls in some other areas. I would challenge staff and consultants to let's be frugal, let's be wise with our money and wise with the programming, and continue to find ways to reduce costs when able. But I would be an advocate for keeping the buildings together and going through a reprioritization of the capital sales tax program. Specifically, item 18, I think, can be freed up, and there are others that I think we could either free up or pull a little bit here, pull a little bit there, kind of thing. I also would like to comment. I sent out an email, and I don't know if many of y'all had a chance to look at it. And Mark and I talked about this several months ago, I think. But, I stressed before we started this project, when Todd was still here, that we get this building on that corner of the parcel to really anchor it. I sent you guys an email that has two pictures, one of what the Richmond County Sheriff's Department, just to give you an idea of a 2-story, nice looking masonry structure looks like on a street corner. And then not but a couple blocks away, what the Richmond County or Augusta Utilities Department looks like, which is a 2-story masonry structure that has fenced in parking and a bunch of cars in front of it between it and the street, and what that looks like. These renderings that we've been provided are great, and they provide a pretty good idea, but they also are taken from a higher vantage point and not at a street level perspective. I'm very concerned, and I guess a little frustrated that we are still showing a plan that has the building so far off the road. I think we've got a nice looking, a very nice looking building that in actuality not many people are going to ever see, because it's going to be so far off the road. As you start going down Riverside Boulevard, you've got grade separation between the road and the building. It sits up on a hill a little bit. It sits back off the road. I think your vantage point, you're not going to see the vantage point that was on the screen last showing the police and courts elevation. I think you're only going to see if you're walking out of your car up to the building. And so much of this building is going to be hidden by fencing and parking. That to me, that's a shame. I understand, talking through it with Mark and staff, that there were some reasons for trying to have through drivability and 2 entrances and needing to have gate, fenced in. And I know I'm probably getting too into the weeds here for this discussion, but I guess my point is, when we're going into this, looking at this project a little more, I'm really happy with the look of the building, but I'm really unhappy with where it sits on the building, on the property, the location of parking and fenced in parking. I think if we could shift it around, not totally redesign it, but pull that building up, I think we will be much happier. And it'll have an opportunity to really make a statement. I think it will be a mistake putting it in the location that it's shown on this site plan. I know there's reasons for why we got there, but I truly think that's a mistake if we don't pull it up. That aside, very attractive. I say keep them together. Let's find the money.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to, I know we're like Colonel Clifford and Mark are saying, I mean, these are hypothetical numbers. We don't know till we actually get a bid. But I'm going to tell you now, any delay is going to push, any savings we may get is going to be eat up by material and labor. I've been preaching this, David, you're well aware, and Mark and Fletcher, you may be as well too. In the construction industry, nothing is getting cheaper. Materials are going up. Labor is going up, and I suspect that the more we delay, if we start redesigning, anything that we would save would be eat up by labor and material costs, 6 months from now, a year from now. I mean, I've been on council close to 2 years. We've been talking about this for 2 years. And I know there's a process that has to be gone through. I personally feel like we should go with it the way it's designed. because I don't think we could take the courthouse out and then build a separate courthouse for $2 million. Mark, does that sound reasonable? I don't know if you could just take that courthouse out to save money now, and then we turn around down the road. We've got to find land. We got to build a whole new facility just for the courthouse. I mean, we need to find a way. Fletcher, you alluded to there were some things on the sales tax that we can probably come up with that. Those are my feelings on it. I feel like the more we delay, the more it's going to end up costing in the end. And Mark or Colonel Clifford, if y'all have any comments to that, but that's, I'm in the construction business, and I know things aren't getting any cheaper at all.
Councilman Prisnell, what I would tell you is that, when we did the hypotheticals on this for the $2 million savings, you'd still absorb some future cost, because likely, the concept that I ran with the staff was to keep the city court in the existing building and then do a renovation, on the mechanicals, environmentals, paint, carpet, and that kind of thing, but not substantially change the facility as it is. So, that would be out of a different fund pot that doesn't necessarily come out of CPSD 4. And you're right, we're not going to build a courthouse for $2 million. There's no way. We're just not going to be able to make that happen. So I'm not necessarily against keeping the buildings together. I just want to make sure that the council is aware that the cost is higher than originally advertised, and B, that these are options that you have to exercise as far as you giving guidance. So I'm not trying to poo-poo the initial city council guidance. I just want to make sure you understand as we proceed forward, that we're doing with eyes wide open, understanding what kind of costs and what kind of numbers we're talking about here. And that's why we wanted to put it on the table with council here tonight.
Yeah, I mean, unless somebody can convince me otherwise, I say we go ahead as planned, because like you said, Colonel, a 6-month delay just from redesign, and then you still got to put it out for bids. And and like you said, with COVID and everything else, we don't know what's going to happen. Materials are becoming harder to get. I mean, we're having supply shortages, and I know in lumber and electrical products and roofing and everything else, which is driving the cost up. I just feel like the more we delay this, the more expensive it will get. So I'm all for going ahead as it is.
All right, sir.
Well, okay, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Ms. Pat.
Well, I agree with everybody. I think we need to keep them together, and like I said, this is before you came, Mr. Jim, but I really wish we had our fire and police and court all three together. But I know that's not going to happen right now. So, but I like I said, is it because we've waited is why the cost has changed so much? Or what's caused the difference that, what we allotted for the public safety and now? Is it because of the delay and things just going up, or?
I think there's a variety of factors. I'll have to defer to Mark on kind of the specifics, because obviously the bid price, or correction, the estimation price you had from before, prior to me getting here. But certainly construction costs are going up in certain areas. And then also every time we delay, and I can't attest to whether we accounted for inflation or not on the project or not. But between Mark or Cammie, if one of y'all could chime in and let me know what's the primary cost driver, or at least your opinion on the primary cost driver between the original estimate and where we are today.
Ms. Pat, I think it can be boiled down to two items. One is square footage. The facility is a little bit larger than conceptually had it back in the 2018 when we first went to the CPST vote. That was closer to 30,000, but again, some of that has to do with what we've done with the court and how we physically separated entrances and operational. But again, just so everyone understands, the original program came in at like 50,000 square feet, and now we're back at 35,000. But that's after going through it. So we've had some increases in square footage, but there are there's no squishy areas. And what I mean by that is, we've gone through the program in square footage, and there's several areas where 2, 3, 4 groups are going to use an open area like the conference room. or the EOC, which is multitask, or a break room, or a training area. And then the second part is we are seeing some real jumps in square footage costs. I mean, the estimator came back. He's in this estimator is in the North Carolina market, but he's estimating for this architect that's working all over South Carolina and North Carolina, and really seeing some jumps in the costs that are coming in on the bids. And I think it's like Mr. Presnell said, is we're getting cost jumps in concrete, steel, and sheetrock and that kind of thing. Now, again, we're not North Carolina, so I've gone through his estimate. We applied some local factoring to his numbers. Matter of fact, he came in a lot higher than this. And once I went through, we kind of just did an item by item scrub and kind of applying some of our common sense North Augusta factors to it is how we got to this range. So we're seeing, two things, Ms. Pat, a little more square footage and really seeing a lot higher cost per square foot on these facilities. Now, will that materialize when we actually go to bid? I'm hoping that we'll get some really good bids. I'm hoping that we've got some local general contractors who are going to be interested. We'll have them competitive. They'll have a very clear design, and we'll get some good numbers back. But that's the reason for that cost difference.
And back to the fire station, I know because the same thing sort of happened here. You know, we had 3.8 million, and I presume we will discuss that in our budget, where the money's gonna come from to go with the fire station. You know, that we were a little short on there. So, I mean, we sort of done it on both buildings, but my thing is we've got to move. Chief Thomas and his staff have waited too long. And as Eric said, he's been with us 2 years, and we're still discussing and hadn't budged. So, but like I said, I just, concerned too with the fire station and the shortage there. I just don't want to. So, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. We'll make sure we address that in the budget.
If I could revisit Fletcher's question real quick, I have some clarification on that. I was not fully understanding what he was asking, but I have that now. What I had alluded to earlier is the interest on the debt service. With interest and principal, it's 10.7 for debt service for the headquarters facility. What that means is out of the 11.1, 547,000 of that is to make interest payments on that debt. So you essentially have 10.55 million in construction costs currently with the 11.1 project budget. So if you're looking at the base price with court of 12.6, you're going to start looking for 2 million right off the bat.
Thank you.
Thank you, can be helpful.
Well, I think Bob's still trying to talk, but we can't hear him, so I'll jump in now while I got some space. And I don't really have a whole lot to add to the conversation. I think if we're going to do it, as much as the banker inside of me would want to cut the cord out and not have to worry about that $2 million up front, I think it's going to cost us more, just like everybody says, in the long run to go that route. So, I would support moving forward, reallocating monies from CPSD4 and figuring out a way to let's move forward and get this thing done. I don't like the 6-month delay. I don't like the $2 million potential $2 million plus cost increase either. But it's time for us to move forward on this. I think we can figure out a way to do it. Any programs are just going to cost more money. So it's just time to move forward.
Yes, that was me.
Okay, good. You're on, Bob. We can hear you.
Well, my opinion has always been public safety has been the stepchild for so many years. And we need to go ahead and move forward with these facilities on the same site. And I like Fletcher's idea of moving the buildings closer to the street so the public can see them without looking through the landscape and as well as through the fencing. But it's time that we can move forward. We don't need to delay for anything on this project. And we just need to go back and look at the capital sales tax 4 projects and see what we can come up with at an appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Well, somehow I turned my camera off and don't know. Maybe that's better for y'all. I think it's clear, the message. And David, I didn't give you a chance to speak. If you want to jump in, did I cut you off? I mean, it's, I think it's obvious, that the council's opinion is, keep the two of them together. Keep pressing on the project as it's now conceived. Look at the layout on the site. See how that can be accommodated with the secure entrance. I know that's needed on the Univista side of the building as it's now configured. And as we gain a little bit more understanding of capital project sales tax 4, I think we can handle the priorities on top, and worry about the ones at the bottom. If the Martintown Road and who knows with New Savannah Bluff Lock and Dam and some of the other issues, we can relook at capital project sales tax 4 when we have, I think, a more clear picture of what the receipts are going to be from that. I think it's clear. I think the decision is a reasonable one, and let's press.
I just have one more quick question. This is probably more for Cammie. But if we're positive, the fire station site is good, the public safety headquarters is good, can we put that Life property back up for sale? That would free up funds. I guess that's why that's for Cammie. Is that something, if we were to sell that land, can that go back into either the fire station or the public safety headquarters if we were to sell that?
Yes, those properties were purchased with sales tax funds. So any sale of those properties, those funds have to be redirected back to capital project sales tax and expended for projects on your referendum list. So absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you. So, I don't know if there's any reason we should hold on to these properties. That would free up, it's not the whole 2 million that we're talking about for headquarters or whatever, but it would certainly, every little bit helps. And unless we have some other projects that we're planning on putting on that land, I'm thinking, that might be something worth looking into. I don't know what y'all's thoughts are on it, but that's just kind of the first thing that comes to mind with me. If we know these are the locations, do we need to hold on to that?
And if council did choose to want to use the land for a different project, if they were not sales tax projects identified on the referendum, we would still have to repay back the sales tax fund via some other type of funding, because the land was purchased specifically for sales tax projects with sales tax funding.
I was going to say that I kind of agree with Fletcher's thought process on the footprint of the building. I know that we had a discussion before, on some other projects, wanting to make sure they hug the property line and things like that as far as design. But, I really don't want to slow anything down. It was, but I just wanted to say that, yeah, I like that idea. I know there's been a whole lot of work to get where we are. So I don't want to downplay anybody's work or effort or thought process, because I'm sure it's been hard to get where we are. There's no doubt about that. But I do like the idea of, if we had something to hold the corner a little bit, because this is going to be here for the next, 75 years. This is our building. Just want to put forth the thought process that I want us to put the best effort into it. That's all. But once again, not that we haven't put good effort into it. I know everybody's been working hard. I want to make sure I'm giving everybody credit. I know everybody's working hard. So.
Thanks, sir. Mayor Pettit, is there anything you want to finalize with here on this thing? I think what I heard you and the council say is that I have a unanimous kind of recommendation or decision to move forward on a combined facility and to execute this plan and keep the council and you updated on status updates and how things are going. Is that correct?
Just to talk about your choice of words, we have a consensus to move forward, continue on the path that we were on. So that would be just my only comment, is it's a consensus. And I also want to thank Miss Moody for coming in and bailing me out so you can have the pleasure of looking at me again. My mic and camera on the bottom of the screen have disappeared, so I have to go to secondary thing, and I messed it up. So she was kind enough to help me. So
you can always come down the hall and hop over here. We're happy to have you.
That's a first. Okay, I think we're ready to move on to the Georgia Avenue Bridge, the James U. Jackson Bridge discussion. I think that last one was a very, very, very good discussion. I think we covered everything very, very well in terms of the options and give everybody a chance. It was very, very beneficial to me. So I'll step aside now for the next item.
Thanks, sir. So this is more of a discussion. We're certainly not at a decision point about our bridge. Councilman Dickert gave me some inroads as far as meeting with a couple of the folks here locally. Obviously, you all are more up to speed on the bridge project than I am. What I would tell you, at least in my brief discussions with the city of Augusta and Don Grantham from Georgia Department of Transportation, is that obviously they're the lead on the project right now. We have a number of items that I'm getting from council that involve aesthetic changes to the bridge. So to put it simply, the state of Georgia is funding the structural elements of the bridge. So at the end of the day, if we provide no input or funding, you'll have a updated bridge across the Savannah River. However, it's going to be a very basic bridge. So if the city of North Augusta desires to have aesthetic options on there to include better lighting, under bridge lighting, arches, anything that's materially not a structural element, but makes the bridge look better, to include, I shouldn't say fully structural, but to include access ways, from the bridge into North Augusta, for example, some kind of ramp or something that brings the bridge structure onto the greenway. Those are things that are still in debate. As of the present time, we have not identified a hard funding line from the state of South Carolina or from the county or even locally to make any of these aesthetic choices. So I still have some investigation to do into various funding lines between South Carolina's DOT and also a number of elements within the county. But bottom line is, to put it indelicately, is the more money that we can come up with will lead to greater input and options that we can put onto the bridge, from our perspective. So Councilman Dickert sent me a number of architectural and structural ideas and drawings of the kinds of things that he was interested in. And I guess what I'm looking for here as we go forward from the mayor and from the council really has to do with, do we have a prioritized list, if you will, from the council on the kinds of things that we want to go forward on. Understanding I have not yet secured funding for this, but if we think that, say, underbridge lighting is the number one item, followed by improvements to pedestrian walkway or potentially breaking out, a bike path from the pedestrian walkway, those things will be helpful to know as we're trying to negotiate for, fund lines and various grants and funding, understanding that we may have to do some matches depending on what the funding stream is. So that's a very long-winded way of saying, hey, I have some rough sketch ideas based on some of the initial feedback I've received, but what I have not come to ground with yet is hardline funding for this project. So with that, I don't know if Councilman Dickert, if you had anything you wanted to put onto the table that based on your previous conversations with state of Georgia or city of Augusta.
Oh, well, thank you, Jim. No, not really. I had shared with, I think with Mayor Pettit, and I think Mayor sent out to everyone. I had done some research on what did the original bridge structure look like, the original bridge across from North Augusta into Augusta, and shared that. The Arts and Heritage Center actually helped me find that image. I didn't know if we could somehow make the guardrails match that kind of look. I thought that could be a cool touch. Since money's a challenge with this, I don't know, if we start reinventing guardrails and they don't have pre-made forms and so forth for it, that may start getting into some substantial cost. I wouldn't mind hearing from bridge designers and people who've got a lot more understanding and knowledge of bridges. Is that something that could potentially be incorporated economically, or is that just something that's just we're wasting our time even considering? But I will say I have had some conversations with the Green Jackets. I reached out to them a month or two ago and just said, hey guys, this is a project that's going to have big impact on you guys directly and Riverside Village, and has anybody kind of included you in the loop, updated you on it and shown you this information? They said they had vaguely heard about it. I think Tom down there had seen a presentation at a Rotary Club event or something similar. But anyway, we hopped on a conference call with three individuals from the Green Jackets, or I myself hopped on a conference call with them and talked through it and showed them the presentation that you guys have all seen. And I think we need to talk with the Green Jackets. They had substantial interest in the lighting aspect of this. I'm very much was in favor of it before talking with them, and even after talking with them and hearing them buy into the idea of the underbridge lighting idea, especially since it seems to be a relatively low cost item when you look on the list provided by Parsons Engineering. I think the underbridge lighting is something we really need to do. As I mentioned to Mayor Pettit and to others, if we can get underbridge lighting that changes color, modern day technology with LED lighting is coming down, have it such that the Green Jackets can tie into it and the city can, 4th of July, you can have it colors, Halloween, different colors, tie it in so the Green Jacket, someone hits a grand slam or a home run and the lights on the bridge flash. I mean, how cool is that? I mean, this bridge is, as y'all have seen lately, all marketing images showing Augusta is a vantage point looking from North Augusta across the river, across that bridge. And, if we can make it tie in with our development and help with that lighting, tie the two communities together, I think that's a real win for us. And the Green Jackets, of course, indicated that obviously the cost associated with connecting them to the bridge they would bear, but Jeff Eisman indicated that he would be willing to help try to find funding sources for the lighting, be it either, just industry connections, whether they could get sponsorships or just reduce cost on those components. I don't know. Those are things that would have to be talked through, but he said that they are very much in favor of at least that component of it and are willing to help the city figure out funding for it. I know there's many other options, but to me, the one I get most excited about is that one because of the low cost and the high impact from effect. All the other items start getting pretty high up there. I'd love to see them, and I'm open to them, but I'm concerned about the funding. And I don't know, what our boys in Columbia, our local delegation, how they might be able to help. I'd love to see steel, just because I think that's more unique. I think it ties into the train trestle that we already have, versus the concrete, but they seem to get astronomical, or what they're showing. I don't know who did these cost estimates, what they're seeming to indicate. I think those are pretty high numbers, but with that, I will be quiet and give someone else a turn.
Well, Fletcher, I appreciate that perspective, and I've been trying to find it, and I can't, and I apologize. We sat down with a number of people several weeks ago with a potential list of enhancements that we in North Augusta had. I'm not exactly sure how the list got generated, but Rachel, I'd be more than happy to let you talk about it. And I can't find the list of the items that we were talking about. And if we can't do it tonight, then maybe we can provide it to them so we can you can look at it and kind of say, Fletcher likes the under bridge lighting or some of the other things, and just kind of rank order them, because there is a possibility within the DOT funding mechanisms for it to be available, but we need to kind of know what our priority is, and then more forcefully attack the possible sources of funding. Because if you ever wanted to punch a marshmallow trying to figure out what we were being told about sources of funding, I mean, it was crazy to me. I mean, it never said, here's around just a made up number. Here's $1 million from this pot. You do this, this, and this. We can maybe get the $1 million. It was like, well, there's money here. There's money there. You need this, that. So I'll shut up, Rachel, and go ahead if you can jump in and help me out with this one.
Certainly. Parsons put together a list of aesthetic options that both sides of the river should consider and are actively considering to provide aesthetic elements. The bridge itself will be rebuilt to the same structure base bridge. So any aesthetics, like we've mentioned, will be covered by both states and local communities. The most expensive item on the list would be faux arches, and the renderings that have been provided are not the best quality. Parsons understands that and admits that. They will work on providing a better design for us to review, but faux arches would be about $5 million in total, and that cost would be split amongst both sides of the river. Again, these would be non-structural arches. I'll just read, there's about 5 or 6 of them, and then turn it over for discussion.
I'm sorry, I think it's we provided the Parsons report, right? The item is on page 14 that Rachel's talking about right now in that report, if you have it in front of you. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. Thank you. Yes. And this was sent by Sharon on Friday, and I think we'd sent it to you all previously. The lighting, different deck lighting, which is what Fletcher referred to, the underbridge, additionally decorative light on top of the bridge, so both above and underneath. There's a smattering of decorative relief on the bridge that can happen. This is just various design elements. It does have a relatively small price tag with it. Currently, the Parsons is recommending to provide 2 towers of pedestrian stairs. Now, what this would do is it would provide access directly from the bridge to the North Augusta Greenway. As currently drawn, it shows the access point right near the stadium, and there would be a stair tower on either side of the bridge. That way, it would prevent pedestrians from running across Georgia Avenue, which would be dangerous. And then decorative fencing. So the bridge as designed, will have basic fencing, safety fencing as required per standards. Decorative fencing would give it, of course, a better look. I think that's it related to the aesthetics. Currently very high level, not very specific when it comes to these descriptions. That designer Parsons has not gotten that far yet in terms of the design. What they're looking for now is just a temperature of what are the sorts of things that we would be interested in and we would be able to fund, and then they will take our ideas and put them to paper. So it operates a little bit differently than what we're used to. Whereas on the South Carolina side and with DOT, they typically identify, okay, this is the amount of funding that we have. What can we do with it? Georgia DOT doesn't necessarily operate that way. And we've discussed that a few times in meetings. They determine what do you want to see on the bridge, then they tell you how much it's going to cost.
Rachel, I was just scrolling through those as you were talking about them, and Fletcher, I agree with you. The underbridge lighting looks cool. Whether we can, that's probably, I don't see the cost estimates in front of me, but I do think that's kind of cool. The steps, the bridge design I saw looks like we're going to have pedestrian on both sides versus just right now it's just on the I guess what you'd call the west side of the bridge. So the steps coming down to the stadium, that'd be kind of cool. I don't know if anybody's going to actually use them, but I don't have that answer. But I mean, yeah, I would agree with Fletcher. I mean, if we can get the lighting and find some sources, I mean, obviously I'm looking at some of the other things too. The arches kind of look cool, but I'm like, $5 million for that. If that's kind of, yeah, I see you shaking your head, Fletcher. I'm like, yeah, that's not worth it. But the lighting, or maybe just try to make it. I mean, a bridge is a bridge, but I'm sure we can make it. They can come up with some ideas to just make it look nicer. I mean, right now especially if you go under by boat, all you see is these big green girders. Maybe we could paint it a little bit more, different color to make it kind of blend in. That's simple fixes there. But I mean, I also feel like that maybe we need to secure funding before we even know. I mean, yeah, if money was no object, we'd like to have all of these things, but if we can get some help from the state or the county, I think that would be a win-win. But I'm sure that I'm not sure whose job that is, but I'm sure one of y'all on staff is working on that. But looking at these ideas, I really think lighting is probably the thing I could go after. It really looks good, and maybe we could put a picture of that on our web page, Rachel, so people that are watching can see what we're looking at on these renderings, because it looks really cool to me.
Okay, let me jump in a little bit. I mean, I'm in agreement, and we're kind of looking for a prioritization. So I think thus far, at least with two of you, $2.5 million for fake arches is a lot of money, but certainly, whereas the underbridge lighting, is more in reach. But I think I heard from the DOT folks and the planning folks at the county is it's going to be beneficial if we say this is where we think the break point is and what we want, and say this is how much money we need, and then we'll figure out a way to work with them to figure out a way if we can find it, and then chop off from the bottom. Is that correct, Rachel, or am I? So we need to figure out what our really wish is, and then how much money can we get, and go down the list or work up from the bottom to drop off or whatever, as opposed to saying, we'd like to have this, how much money can we get? We're going to have to be a little bit more specific in terms of what we would like, I think.
You're correct in that. I'll also mention that we have 2 years until the funding would be required. So Georgia DOT likes to remind us that we have 2 years to find the money. But yes, you're absolutely correct. We may not be able to afford or frankly want all of the items that are on the list. And I think that there are some similar sentiments from the Georgia side as well. Just because it's on the list doesn't necessarily mean that everybody is in agreement that we need every aspect of it. The goal was to create an iconic bridge, and these are the prime methods that we can utilize to make it such an iconic bridge. Previous discussions that we've had, I lost my sheet. The lighting has definitely been a preference of not only staff, but other community partners and our elected officials that have been at the table with discussions. The decorative fencing has also been something that's been desired, and the different types of decorative relief on the bridge, potentially some stamping of the concrete as it's poured, would be an option for that as well. We meet periodically as a group to talk about this project, and we do have a meeting coming up on Wednesday morning where Tom, Libby, Jim, and I have all been invited to provide our feedback on behalf of the city of North Augusta. So the feedback that you all provide us tonight in terms of prioritization, or frankly, if there's anything you just are really not interested in, this is your opportunity to share with us, and we can take it to the larger group on Wednesday. I am trying to find the renderings so I can share my screen and give some examples.
Rachel, while you're pulling that up, I'll just give my input real quick. I think I agree the arches are a priority. The lighting seems to be a pretty good bang for the buck. I like the decorative fencing, and anything that would improve greenway tie into the bridge to tie into the canal side, I think would be really, really nice to have, which I'm assuming is what that sidewalk and shared use path connectivity to existing trails is just improved access to the greenway. Those would be personally my priorities. I obviously the pedestrian stairs do that to some degree, but I would assume that the $1 million allocation on that is more for just, kind of grading and actual connectivity directly to the greenway. But just to throw my 2 cents out there while you're looking for that, those would be my priorities.
Does it, Jim or Rachel, does it make sense to look at the, what was it, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8 items? And just ask council to initially each of them get a rough priority on them. Obviously you're going to consider cost in that ranking, and then we can compile them and get them out to everybody, and say, this is what we can show them all what the rankings were, and then what the composite ranking was, just as a means of gaining a starting point quickly, without trying to individually, I think it's difficult to get input from everybody tonight and prioritize them, individually. I think, the faux arches, I think would be kind of at the bottom of everybody's list, but how the other ones would rank, I don't know. But if we get their input, I think that might help. And if they need any explanation, this would be the perfect time to, to clarify some things. That's how I might suggest doing it.
Mr. Mayor, put together a spreadsheet and get that out to all the council members, get their feedback, and then put out a consolidated, Excel spreadsheet that shows, hey, this is what we got back, from the council, and then, make sure get a final, as we would say in the Army, go, no go, before we go try to launch and try to find funding. But we can certainly do that.
And just all of us remember that our founder of our city stood over there on the levee and looked over and founded North Augusta. And of course, he built the first bridge. So I think this is very important, this bridge coming into our great city.
If I can, I wanted to, and I'm glad you have that pulled up, Rachel. I wanted to comment just on this real quick. The staircase, just my personal opinion. I think we need to maybe design the bridge such that a staircase could be added should it be desired in the future. but I don't think this needs to be part of the project. I'm just thinking if I lived in the River Club, would I necessarily want a staircase coming right down into my neighborhood from downtown Augusta? And I don't think I would. And I think we're going to be pushing against some very valid opposition and challenges if we, to this project, if we are including a staircase. I do agree with Kevin Toole, though, that the Greenway connection is a vital must there. And I guess I see that differently because it's pulling people a little bit further away. Because really, if you look, the distance from this staircase to the Greenway connection is about the same distance as it is from the staircase to the Augusta Canal connection. So I think it's much safer from a safety standpoint, public safety standpoint, and crime standpoint, having the Greenway connection further in to South Carolina than right here as soon as you come over the water. Just personal comment.
Something else I just thought about when you brought this up, Fletcher, with it being that close, because looking at this drawing, it looks like the river would be right to our right as we're looking at it. I see a lot of parents with young kids down there. Just think if they turn their back for a minute, kid runs up the steps. They're in the middle of, Georgia Avenue. So I think, you may be onto something. Just bring it back further in. And like you say, I think, maybe put the provisions in there for it to be added later. But yeah, I can see some issues with it being there because that is a greenway. A lot of people, use it. And this is right behind the stadium looking at the rendition. I'm assuming that's what I'm looking at. And like I say, there are a lot of times, especially during games, a lot of people with young children, if they turn their back for 1 minute, I just see that being more of a safety concern than if we brought it down a little bit closer to the tie-in right there at right behind the City Hall.
I wanted to add it. I'm not an architect, but I really like a lot of the ideas that they have presented here. And once again, like Miss Pat said, this is another iconic long-term structure that's going to be here for a very long time. So I think any effort that we can put into making it an iconic facility or a location, and remember, it's our major gateway into North Augusta. If you could flip to that page 25, Rachel, I appreciate it. The one that's labeled 25. I really like the look of that brick veneer type structure. I know that's probably one of the most expensive, but that one with the brick veneer, I really like that one. That kind of concept or that thought process, and not necessarily having stair towers, but more ramps and tiers like you see here is something
Is
that
this it?
Yes, that's the one I like. Yes.
Okay.
But I think more of a system of ramps and tiers to be able to get down towards the Greenway more than a stair tower is more aesthetic to me. I hate to see a stair tower that we have to put and then put chain link fence all the way around it like I've seen in other locations. It looks very institutional. But I really like this kind of concept here. Like I said, I'm not an architect, but this one looks good. I like it has a couple little vantage points you can stop and look across during the walkway. It looks like you have a couple picture points. But I'm not an architect, but I think, any effort we can get other funds from DOT and make this the major entry point into North Augusta. I guess we got to remember that. And with what we've already put in effort as far as the stadium and everything else is going on, we need to push them as hard as we possibly can to help create this image and this picture. We want to have this picture painted for the next 100+ odd years. So I think it's worth it.
And David, just let me add, that's a good point, and a gentleman from the DOT pointed out that this is not only an entrance to North Augusta, but it's an entrance to South Carolina. And so, you know, it just reinforces, I think, the point you made. Anyone else have?
I would think that we definitely would have a lot of support on the state level, because just for that simple fact, you know, we got I-20, that's I-20 interstate bridge. This is a downtown thoroughfare, and I would think that we'd have all the kind of support we needed at the state level.
Okay, any other comments? I mean, I think, well, Jim, if you can get that file out and get comments back, they're meeting Wednesday, I think they said. That's day after tomorrow, is that right? But at least, again, we can have a starting point, not that we've had a chance to look at it, but everybody get their input in as reasonably quickly as you can, so we can consolidate it, which will take no time at all, and just get a sense of what you're doing, then what we really want to fight for dollar-wise. And I guess if there's something like the faux arches that you really don't want, we could give that a priority of 9 or something like that, and then it clearly would be not on our list at all, you know, for discussions of money, whatever it might be, not only the faux arches, but anything else, just as a, hey, I don't think this makes any sense at all. So, but I think this is interesting. And I know we talked about the pedestrian. I'm sorry, go ahead, Fletcher. I'll shut up.
No, I was just going to say, might I add that when you send it out, that you add a line item for potential adds to the list, because somebody may have something, okay, yeah, that's not already considered.
Certainly do that.
Go ahead, Jim. I'm sorry.
I was just acknowledging Councilman Dickert's request. We'll be able to put that in the spreadsheet. It's not a problem.
Okay, any other comments on the bridge? That exhausts our agenda items. Moving on then from just a general perspective, we gather what again, not until the 21st, is that the right date of September? Because with Labor Day is a holiday, we don't typically meet then. Obviously, we try and stick to that. I'm glad everybody was able to participate tonight. We had, obviously, you can see by the time it is now that we had a lot to talk about, and it's nice to have an opportunity to sit down and listen and think and discuss items. I much appreciate that, and we try to keep them to a minimum. I understand off weeks, but recognizing we wouldn't get back until late in September, I thought it was collectively, we thought it was a good idea to do it. So I appreciate everything you do, staff and council, because I know this takes a lot of time, and it's obvious from what I hear every time, things I didn't even think about, you come up with that are positive and constructive. So I appreciate that. And if there are nobody else going to flip on their microphone, Eric, you wanted to say something. I see that.
Yeah, if everybody has just a few minutes, Rachel, do you have the drawing that I emailed you and Rick the other day? This is I just did some preliminary work on the dock that we have the grant for down at Riverside Village.
I'm going to pull you talk, Eric.
What's that? Okay. I called a local dock builder, kind of explained what we were looking for, and he sent just a conceptual drawing. It's very similar to the one right there at the landing, which is, right on the other side of the 13th Street Bridge, a 6 slip. It just gives us somewhere to go from. We didn't know what kind of money, we have $100,000 grant. We didn't know what this was going to get us. and we don't really have to necessarily discuss it tonight, or if Rachel, if you just want to email it to everybody, I just wanted to get anybody's thoughts on it. And I've spoken to Rick about this as well too. I think the only comment he made is, we might need to check and see if it's expandable in the future. But I just, wanted everybody to kind of take a quick look at this and see if this is something that would be good, or if there's anything I need to, we need to add to it moving forward. And if y'all have time, that's fine. If not, Rachel, you could email it. You or Colonel Clifford could email it.
Rachel, I think the discussion is an area we probably shouldn't get into tonight, having formally established our agenda. I think if you can provide it to everybody and so we can become familiar with it, Eric, and then at the next subsequent meeting, we can put it on the agenda and have that discussion. I just think that's that Kelly is off, I see. I think that's the safest way to do it.
Yes, sir. And that's fine. And like I say, I just wanted to, being an avid boater, I get a lot of people asking me about this. And, I go down to southbound in Rio a good bit, and they always ask, hey, what about the dock? So I was just a little excited about it. And, but Rachel, if you don't mind sharing that with everybody. And, guys, I just, if you want to email or we can have a discussion on the next study session about it, and just see if y'all have any other ideas or if it works for what you like. But it's just something that I was able to kind of put together kind of quickly.
No, I think we can do that. Get everything. And it goes along with having an opportunity to look at it ahead of time so we can, mull it over before we sit down and talk about it. That's an intent we try and get to. We don't always make it, but that's something we work towards. So I appreciate that.
And that's fine, because it's almost my bedtime anyway.
Past mine. Anything else from anybody? I don't see any mics unmuted, so having no additional thoughts, appreciate your time and devotion to this, and have a good week. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.